there, and welcome back to another review. So I'm on a bit of a roll at the minute with the Godzilla movies, so I thought I might as well keep the freight train going. Today we're going to be looking at the sixth main installment in the franchise, and that is Invasion of Astro-Monster, made back in 1965. This was sort of the first movie in the series that had sort of that alien invasion theme going on. This idea had been used in other Toho movies, but it was sort of a first for Godzilla. Yes, in the previous movie we did have that sort of idea of a space monster, a monster from outer space, but this was sort of the first movie that did sort of cater to that sort of alien invasion theme. Now, with this production, there was a man called Henry G. Saperstein who worked for, I think it was United Productions of America, who was involved with this movie, and it was his idea to get American actor Nick Adams on board, so the film may be sort of more marketable for sort of Western audiences, and to give it a bit more mass appeal, to make a sort of film goers, the idea was to just make it the demographic more, to make it sort of appeal to sort of, like I say, mass appeal, the mass audience. He's also that the films were, his ideas was also that the films up to this point were becoming too formulaic, and if you recall, there's only so many times you can do a monster is existed or come into being because of a nuclear test or a nuclear explosion or a nuclear bomb or whatever it may be. You know, of course, the audiences want to see the monsters fight. They want to, of course, they want kaiju action, but you have to remember you can't have every time because of a nuclear blast, because of a nuclear test, because that they had to inject something fresh into it. And this is very much what this film tried to do. I think his notion as well was to go into this film a lot quicker, in terms of if you take into account something like the press conference, for example. Usually with these kind of films, there's always a press conference. Any monster movie, kaiju movie, there's always a press conference. Now, usually that would happen at the start of the movie. His idea was, let's do that later. Let's just get the ball rolling. Let's get the audiences drawn in. Let's draw them in. Let's get them involved with what's happening. Let's kick the film off on an exciting note. Let's not have a boring press conference right at the start of the movie. The movie had a much lower budget compared to previous films, even I think using some previous footage from some of the past movies up to this point, and that is something, unfortunately, that one or two of the films in particular rely too heavily on stock footage, because you watch some of these movies. Even back in the day when I was watching them, you watch it and it's like, isn't that the same shot of Godzilla from that movie? Isn't that the same scene isn't that the same time when he does his atomic breath? It looks exactly the same. Now, to the average moviegoer, you wouldn't notice. If you were just a standard moviegoer, you'd only seen one or two Godzilla movies, you wouldn't notice. But if you were a bit of a Godzilla fan, you knew the films quite well, you see some footage, some scenes that do get repeated. This, of course, is the movie with the She victory dance that Godzilla performs. I know Honda, the director himself, was against the idea. And if you take nothing else from this movie, that is probably what you will remember the most. If you type in Godzilla victory dance, Godzilla She victory dance, you will see it on YouTube. It's pretty... I think everybody knows the victory dance at this point. I think it's universally recognised. I mean, I can understand why they may have been against it, but now I just can't imagine the film without it. It's become so synced up with this movie. But from Honda's point of view, if you go back to the first movie, I'm sure this was the kind of thing, not what he had in mind, and the idea when if you think of Godzilla, I'm sure this was not his original character he had envisioned for some of the moves and things Godzilla would do. In the Criterion box set, they even used that as the basis for the artwork on the Invasion of Astro-Monster page. I will say Nick Adams is great in this. His character that he plays, Glenn, has such a great enthusiasm, and you can tell the actor himself is really enjoying himself here. Adams, having previously been in another Toho production, namely Frankenstein Conquers the World, that was made earlier the same year. So we get flying saucers, spaceships, aliens in vinyl suits with wraparound sunglasses. The whole film is very futuristic in its approach, even though it was meant to be set in the 60s. So the film opens and we learn it is the year 1960X. It reminds me that when it's 1960X, 1990X, it always reminds me of sort of games like Probotector, Mega Man, or something like Fist of the North Star. It's always 1990X or in the year X. So anyway, In this mystery year, there is also a new planet called Planet X, which has been discovered. We meet our two leads, Glenn and Fuji, who are astronauts on the way there and work for the World Space Agency. On top of this, we have a subplot with Fuji not liking his sister's new boyfriend, Tetsuo, who is like an inventor, who is selling his new invention, basically just this loud alarm, to the World Education Corporation. And for some reason, the woman buying it, Nabikawa, knows of his girlfriend, Haruno, and Fuji and where they work. So Glenn and Fuji land on Planet X with a very nice figure on an elevator as they descend from the rocket. I mean, when miniatures are done well, they're done really well. Okay, they're done really well. That scene in particular, when they're sort of coming down this elevator from their rocket ship, you can tell it's just a stick figure and it's just a miniature. The gravity on Planet X is a third of the Earth's and the pressure is like 1/10. They sense some sort of lightning, wondering what it is. Fuji at this point, distracted, finds some human footprints and goes to investigate, but on his return, Glenn and the spaceship have disappeared. Then this cylinder comes up through the ground that he is told to step into. Then we meet our aliens with their wraparound shades and aerials on their heads, and we have the leader, sort of the commandant of the aliens. We learn they are hiding underground from Monster Zero, otherwise known as King Ghidorah, however you want to say it. In terms of the pronunciation, I've met so many people and everybody says it different. Handful say Ghidorah, another handful say Ghidorah. However you want to say it, it really doesn't. I'm sure there's a correct way. I always just mix it up. Usually, I think more often than not, I will say Ghidorah. But yeah, I think it's generally accepted that both forms are okay. So their main aim is the aliens' main aim is they want to borrow Godzilla and Rodan. Okay, they want to borrow them from Earth to defeat Monster Zero, and in return they were going to provide a cure for sort of human disease, and they're basically going to give Earth a cure for illness and sickness. So the astronauts fly back to Earth to discuss the aliens' proposal, and everyone seems to be on board. Tetsuo, Fuji, Glenn and Haruno all go out and have some drinks, and like I say, we have this subplot where Fuji is a right downer on Tetsuo, that he's not in favour of him as like his sister's boyfriend, sorry. For the sheer fact he doesn't want him dating her due to the fact he's worried like he's not going to be able to support her in the long run. He's not going to have financially enough to sort of give her the life that she wants, and it's like a little subplot that goes along with the movie. And by a strange coincidence, Glenn, or Mr. Glenn as he is known, is dating the woman that Tetsuo sold his loud alarm device to. As I say, it's basically just an ear-piercing super loud alarm. So Glenn goes to this lodge with his new girlfriend, and he says he reckons he saw the commandant from Planet X there. Glenn and Fuji get suspicious of the aliens' real and true intentions. Then some flying saucers come out of this lake near this lodge. And the lodge is sort of functioning as sort of the aliens' sort of Earth base, like that's their sort of hideout, their HQ, as it were, sort of on Earth. The aliens entrap Godzilla and Rodan in like these floating bubbles so they can transport them back to their own planet easily enough. Tetsuo follows the woman who wanted his idea as she hasn't paid him yet. Glenn, Fuji and the professor go with the aliens back to their planet as they need to still get what the aliens promised them. And I love in this movie when they're going to and from Planet X, which does happen a few times. In this movie, they go from Planet X back to Earth like nothing. Like it's just a bus route to them. Like literally, you can just hop on a rocket and be on Planet X within like 10-15 minutes. So once there, Godzilla and Rodan get taken out of this like stasis sleep they are in, and they're fighting Monster Zero like within a matter of seconds. Okay, they're battling him literally right away. Godzilla the big man coming in with a supermassive flying leap at him. Then, of course, we have the She victory dance, which I won't say too much about. A lot of people know it. You can see it on YouTube. I'm not going to, either way, let's just say Godzilla is one happy bunny. Just put it that way. Like, he's won the fight, and let's just leave it at that. So Glenn and Fuji go to investigate the ship. They find some gold and get captured. And the aliens are like, our law says you should be punished, but we'll let you off. Okay, so they're, it's like, you should be punished, but we'll do you a favour here. You're off the hook. So they get the cure and return home. Naturally, of course, Godzilla and Rodan are super annoyed about being left there, as you would be, because, they were quite happy on Earth. And Godzilla and Rodan are like, oh, so we're just on Planet X now, are we? Great. Didn't ask to come here. You've just abandoned us on Planet X. Let's face it, as I say, they didn't ask to come. Just can we go back to Earth, please? We've done what you wanted. Can we go back? And also I love how the Planet X guards are all standing in sort of like wave order at one point, like in height. There's a certain scene where if you see the guards, they're sort of lined up, but it sort of goes up and then down in like high order for whatever reason. You do actually feel sorry for the monsters here being left there, especially the way it's sort of shot from the ship's point of view as they're sort of leaving the planet and they're sort of being abandoned. It reminds you very much of that shot from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, if you remember, when they're leaving the island and the dinosaurs are basically just there. They're like sort of left to sort of face their maker. It's the same kind of shot here. Obviously that doesn't happen, but it's that same kind of shot where the monsters are sort of, you're abandoning us, you're just leaving us here. Despite all the silliness, there is or at least attempts at trying to take on like some sadness into the movie, even if it is very brief and very, very subtle. Meanwhile, Tetsuo's gone missing and he's being locked up by the Planet X's, as I'll call them. So the people from Planet X has given them this tape, right, which they go to back and they play it, and it is the Commandant going back on his words saying that the Earth is now under our control. Them dirty double Planet X's, dirty double crossers. And they just wanted the monsters for their own power and their own ends. I mean, why not one of them thought it was a bit fishy and a bit odd that they give them an audio tape? I mean, if they were meant to be giving them like cures and things like this for diseases and illnesses and sickness, couldn't they just write it down or put it on a memo or, pieces of paper or something like that? I mean, it was an audio recording. I mean, why didn't they think, well, so what is this? But anyway, they get back. It turns out the woman Glenn was seeing, Napikawa, was one of the alien spies, but she's totally fallen for him. After declaring her love, she gets killed. Meanwhile, Ghidorah has been spotted in the US, as it turns out the people from Planet X can control monsters with electronic magnetic waves. Of course they can. What gets me is, though, if you look at talking from a plot narrative or plot hole, whatever you want to call it, but what gets me is they want Earth to surrender, right? They're like, you must surrender, right? If they have all these monsters at their disposal, why don't they just invade anyway? They're like, right, we want you to surrender first before anything happens. It's like they've got all these monsters. They haven't got to wait for Earth's permission. The cards are well and truly in their favour. They've got these monsters. They've got the technology. They've got all these things. They don't need to wait for Earth to sort of surrender. It's like, just take it anyway. It doesn't matter if we agree or not. You're obviously holding the trump cards. You've got all the cards. So Glenn puts in he gets put in a cell with Tetsuo, who after finding a note from his lady who got killed, learned that the people from Planet X are completely and utterly defenseless against a certain audio frequency. Now he's invented an audio sort of loud alarm call device. And their weakness is a certain frequency. So do you see where this is going? Do you see where this might be going? Which enables R2 to escape, as this frequency just happens to be the same as the one that his device emits. Go figure. So the only way they can escape from where they are is to swim across, and the very next shot we see them, not only are they both completely dry, but they also have a change of clothes as well. They meet Fuji, who has found a way to intercept the waves, and the aliens are sending out to control the monsters. Godzilla and Rodan get woken up and told to basically go and cause some damage. I will say this scene is probably some of the best destruction and miniature work we've seen up to this point. We got cars going through shop windows, and although the plot is silly, the action set pieces are actually quite sophisticated and extremely well done. And as I mentioned, when miniature work is done well, especially in these early movies, when it is done well, it looks incredible. There's one of the movies that I don't want to spoil too much because I've got a lot of reviews coming up, but there's one of the movies, now it's not the best movie in the whole of the Showa era sort of Godzilla's films, but there's one of them that has the best miniature work I've ever seen, but it's not the best film. But I will point that out as the reviews go along, and you might, if you know your Godzilla movies, you might already know the one I'm talking about. So as I say, great, miniature work in this film. So much like in Mars Attacks, their idea is to broadcast Tetsuo's noise over the radio, get everyone to play it so the aliens will crumble and falter. Lots of shots with the people and the monsters in the background, which look really cool. So because of the noise, this causes them to lose control of the monsters, their ships to falter and their Earth base to collapse, eventually going to the extreme as to blow themselves up. The monsters come to, and Godzilla doing some almost like boxing on Ghidorah, and it's worth noting that Rodan even picks Godzilla up at one stage and launches him into Ghidorah. As with what happens a lot of the time, they fall into the sea. Ghidorah flies away, leaving the chapter open for another day. And it's a great kaiju sci-fi B movie. I mean, you could argue probably all the Godzillas, give or take, are B movies in terms of like sort of when they were made in the 60s and that kind of thing. But this is a great sci-fi one. If nothing else to say, watch it for the She victory dance and some vinyl clothed aliens. But as I mentioned, there's a lot to be enjoyed with this one. They were trying something new. I think it's probably in the box set from Criterion, it's probably one of the start to finish, probably one of the more entertaining ones, Invasion of Astro-Monster. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie. I might even probably say I've enjoyed it a lot more than Ghidorah the three-headed monster, but it's all subjective anyway. As I say, I will try and get through. I'm trying to get through all the Godzilla movies and get sort of my views of all these films across to you. But you know, in terms of the Godzilla movies, like, you know, there's good ones, bad ones, and I think this is definitely, in terms of, like I say, the earlier releases, definitely one of the more entertaining ones. And it's like I say, it's got that whole sci-fi B-movie vibe running through it. So thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.